Today I'm looking at an interpretive design using some gorgeous red roses. If this is something that you would like to learn how to do for Remembrance Sunday, then keep watching today's tutorial. Welcome back. Now today should be Tuesday, and normally on a Tuesday I share a back to basics floral design with you, or I recap on something that we've discussed before. But as it's the week leading up to Remembrance Sunday here in the UK, I thought it would be nice for me to do an interpretive style arrangement using some red flowers. I've got red roses. There's no poppies available at the moment, although I do have a few artificial poppies that I might feed in amongst the flowers to create that remembrance feel for my floral design. Now usually on the channel I teach shapes, so triangles, L shapes, line arrangements, or designs that are for a specific occasion. But today I'm going to do something that's called an interpretive style, and that's more of a creative approach that expresses a feeling or a mood or a particular occasion, or tells a story. And this interpretive style is often used for competition work where you get a title. So it could be wartime, it could be summertime, it could be your holidays, and you interpret that feeling in an arrangement. So sometimes you don't necessarily create a particular shape. I'm probably going to go either with an L shape or a version of an upside down T, an inverted T. Now these types of designs can be quite avant-garde and very out there, or they can be quite traditional, which is the design that I've chosen to do today. Often they incorporate unexpected or unusual material in them that helps really create that theme or that mood that you're trying to create and transports you into another dimension. So my consideration for today's design was remembrance, and I've thought a little bit along the lines of a design that is going to be quite harsh, quite symbolic, quite barren, quite dark, and has the red roses as a colour of remembrance. Or we could of course go for all white flowers, which would symbolise peace, but I've chosen to go with those luscious dark reds. And my choice was probably swayed by the fact that we're in the autumn and there are lots of dark reds and brown foliages around at the moment, which are going to really add to that lovely symbolic reference that I'm trying to capture in the design. Now I have got two symbolic crosses that I'm going to be using. One I've made out of dogwood. So if you're not familiar with dogwood, this comes from the cornice. My cornice has come from the garden, and I've just cut it all into a similar length and fashioned it into a cross. And if we think about this, it's quite big. So my floral design needs to be big enough so that the cross itself is part of the design and doesn't look like it's been put in as an afterthought. And my thoughts are, I'm going to put it straight into the floral foam. But as a backup plan, just in case I use up all my floral foam with my flowers, I have got one of the pin holders which could hold my cross there at the back should I not have enough room in the foam. And to give my arrangement 3 dimension and some contrast in texture, I've also made a smaller cross which is from bark that's fallen off the tree. I've used this in lots of different ways throughout the different videos on YouTube. So that will give me, with this one placed at the back, whether it goes in the foam or my pin holder, it gives the arrangement depth straight away. We don't want to put things really close together because your arrangement is going to be flat. So my first big consideration needs to be that this red cross at the back needs to be surrounded by flowers and not standing up on its own. Otherwise it almost makes the arrangement look like it doesn't gel together very well. So that's my plan. Just going to move those out of the way. And I do have some artificial red poppies, which I'm hoping I can blend in amongst my red roses. And I've got supermarket red roses today, but I have gone for the tall, more expensive ones rather than the little short ones, because the short ones aren't going to give me the height that I need. And my mechanics for today is green floral foam. And I do have quite a lot of foam, and that's because I'm hoping that I will be able to sit those crosses inside and give me that rough, harsh look. I've got a wood splice on the bottom. So I'm really trying to think my base work through. There will be no good, I don't think, putting this in a really luxurious glass vase or an expensive container, because I'm trying to depict barren land and harsh conditions. So we don't want anything that's not going to create that look that I'm trying to achieve. Right, so as usual, I've done lots of talking to get you started. I'm going to get rid of these so I've got more room, and I'm going to start with creating some height. Now I'm going to visualize that to my right hand side I'm going to end up with the cross. In fact, we'll put the cross in to start with. And what I've done here is, rather than try and insert the large chunky end of the branches into my floral foam, I've given myself 2 prongs so that when I place it in the foam, I can place just the 2 longer prongs in there and we get a nice bit of support. And you can see straight away the design is really quite tall. So I don't think I'm going to need the prongs on the bottom, so the pin holders can go to one side, and my piece of bark hopefully will just sit nicely there into the foam. And the way I've got them there, they're quite close together, so I'm just going to take that one out and give them a bit more space. What I was starting to say was, you might want to do this as an interpretive design for your local church. You might be fundraising or selling poppies, and this would be a lovely design to sit on a table. It could be on an entrance hallway, or it could be in a shop window display. I'm guessing that not many of you are likely to have an arrangement for Remembrance Day, but you know, we never know. So now I'm going to go nice and tall, and I'm going behind that first red cross, the tall red cross, so that the colour is being brought all the way up to the top. And I've just pulled the camera slightly back so you can see the top of the design more clearly. So I'm starting back in the foam, and I'm using this Cotoneaster, which is this lovely red berry. But what you'll notice about it is it's a tall, thin foliage. So it's almost representing a line. I haven't got anything too fussy and too bushy at the back, because I don't want to hide that dogwood cross too much. I've also got some clematis vine, which I wanted to weave up at the end to almost symbolise barbed wire that you would maybe find out there on the battlefield. So if you ever plan to do flower festivals or competition work, then sometimes you will get a title for your arrangement. And what you need to do initially is to investigate exactly what that title means. So if you're creating something for a Remembrance Day, then it's fairly obvious what we're looking to do. But you might have something that's fairly abstract, or you might have a design title that's a bit more unusual or a bit more abstract. But what you really need to do is investigate that title first and visualize a picture in your head, whether it's a happy feeling, it's a sad feeling. Generally try and picture what you're trying to create. And with this arrangement, I've used branches and twigs that will sort of symbolize strength and resilience, almost like a circle of life or starkness of loss. And you could do that with branches that don't have any leaves, or in my case I'm using Copper Beech, which is starting to lose its leaves and it's starting to change in colour, and I think that it reinforces that sort of sombre feeling that we're trying to create. And it's also a beautiful colour link between my cross that I formed there in the middle. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to bring some round to the front, and what I'm really thinking of doing is creating a bit of an outline shape. Now I did say in the beginning I wasn't sure which way I was going to go, but I think it's almost become an L-shape arrangement, and I can focus my roses down and over onto one side. Now I do only have red roses today and the little berries that I've already used, but I do also have some grasses and different types of foliage. And really what I've done there is aim to cover that plastic dish, give myself a background, and to start to get that three-dimensional shape started. And then I'm going to fill in my foam there at the back. Now I don't mind using the branches that are showing a little bit of dried leaves on there, because I think that all connects together with the theme that I'm trying to create. We really don't want anything in there that's pretty, delicate, because it's not really in keeping with the style that I'm trying to create. And then with these smaller leftover pieces of the cotoneaster or cotoneaster, whichever way you pronounce it, I'm going to help connect one side of the arrangement to the other. So the berry is on one side, and now I'm bringing it all the way through onto the opposite side as well. Now my second choice of foliage is going to be the Acer. Now the two foliages that I've used so far have both come from my garden, and I really love the colour on them. They're autumnal, they blend beautifully with my red rose, and they also help to connect with the reds that are in my bark and my wood. And I'm just going to tuck a little bit more greenery in before I start placing my roses, remembering to fill in the back. Any type of foliage will be okay. It doesn't have to be these gorgeous red tones, but it really helps add to the theme that I'm trying to interpret. Now we've got a fairly good L shape. I think it works best because it can curve nicely around my two crosses there at the back. Now the rose that I've got is a supermarket rose. It's come from a large bunch of 12 roses, and I would guess that this rose is called Freedom. Judging by the size and the shape of the head, it's a little bit different to the small standard rose that you quite often get in a supermarket. And the only issue with them is that the head is really nice and fresh, but lots of them have lost their leaves. So they haven't been cared for particularly well in the supermarket. Hopefully we'll be able to disguise them in amongst my own greenery. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it behind the first taller cross. Again, it's going to give me that 3-dimension. If I put everything in front, it almost splits the design in half. And what I'm going to do is pick the size heads, going from small to large where the focal point is, and then as I move away, they'll get smaller as I move away. And I'm going to try and equally space them out. So as I come downwards, there's a similar space gap between them. So the gap between each one is very similar. And then I'm going to work from the opposite side so that I can get more of an understanding about how many flowers I need to fit in the gap. So if we go right the way over to the edge, I can visualize how many roses I need to place in the gap. And it's almost like dot to dot. What we're trying to do is make your eye travel in that almost like an L shape from the top down to the focal point and then off to one side. I probably won't use all of the 12 roses, but what I've got to think about is, because the arrangement is quite substantial in height and width, if I don't put enough roses in, the proportion of the materials won't work quite so well. So if we look at it now, the red roses are almost lost in amongst all the greenery. But what I'm going to do before I add in any more roses is I'm going to put in those artificial poppies, and I can get a lovely link with the colour and the shape of the poppy from one side to the next. Now my poppies, my artificial poppies, are left over from another job that I've done. So they're all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And that's the height that the flower is. I could cut it off, wire it and make it taller, but I'm going to see if it's going to be tall enough on its own. And what I really need to do is to get one in this position here. I'm going to have to wire one onto a longer gauge wire, a taller length wire, to fit it into that position there. But before I do that, I'll place in the remaining ones down at the bottom. And then as I tilt them forward, you can see more clearly that it's a poppy, whereas the one on the top is facing more upwards, which is more suitable in this type of floral design. What we don't want to do is angle all these forward, because the design will look very staged and artificial. We want to make it quite natural looking. And I need to spread out the 5 as best I can. before wiring this again and getting it into that position in the floral design. And to do that, I'm going to use floral tape and a longer gauge wire. So I've extended the poppy up onto a stronger wire, and that means now I can carry that colour through all the way to the top. I've got a lovely sweeping L shape. I'm just going to extend this bottom section, make that longer, and I've also found myself another piece of the cotoneaster, so that can come more out towards the side, and that's going to help add a little bit of extra colour down there to the base. Now I've also got some grasses. This is miscanthus grass. Now grasses and wheat often symbolise passing of time or renewal or the connection between old and new. So you'll quite often see either wheat or grasses in designs that are interpreting anything to do with the war or the past. And these are going to come in all parts of the arrangement. So we're really copying that line we created right at the very beginning with the rose, sweeping from one side to the other. I don't think I'm going to add in any more or many more roses. I'm probably going to put one more in the focal point here because this area here is a bit weak. There's not really a clear dominant flower there in the middle, so we're going to pop one there in the centre. I'm also going to bring one in this area here because we don't have a red rose there on the shorter side. And just in that little gap there where I feel we could do with something a bit more impressive, I'm going to add in a rose, and I'm just going to play with this one, just tease it apart a little bit. So I've got more of a focal flower to add in, one that's going to give me a more dominant feature. And I often find that by putting in a flower in one position, it then sometimes makes the design look not quite right in another position. And I feel now I need a red rose in that position there. So I might end up using all of the roses in the packet. So quite tall in this area here, just alongside that poppy, and I think that's going to work quite well. So there are 12 roses in the packet, so I might as well use up all 12. But the question is, do I put it in this position here? So does it come alongside, or does it go more in this place over here? And I think it's going to come here. I'm going to pop it there on my shorter side. So this is probably more of an asymmetric triangle than an L shape. I did say at the very beginning I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do, but that for me is just amazing. I think that's worked out really well. I'm delighted that the two crosses are an integral part of the design and don't look like they've been put in as an afterthought. And what I'm going to do now is add some of the clematis, the old man's beard. And the reason that I've chosen this is because I felt it had a bit of a barbed wire sort of feeling to it. It's that really sort of harsh feature, and what I'm going to do is put it on the opposite side, almost like it's trailing up or growing up the side of the crosses. Again, it's creating that very barren, sort of desolate appearance. And this is almost like a wild clematis that you see growing in the hedgerows. And it does work really well in designs where you're trying to interpret wildlife, countryside and that type of thing. And on that note, you might have noticed that I've got an autumn wreath hanging behind me. And there is a full tutorial online if you want to learn how to do the autumn wreath. It's a moss design. It's got florist and forage material in it. And if you follow the link in the description box, then you'll be able to purchase and download the course along with a workbook to go with it. And then my final piece of material that's going to go in, again, it's to almost represent barricades, barbed wire, the harshness again of the fields. I'm going to add in some of this vine, which is going to really connect all of the elements together. And what I've done is I've just fed it through all the different components there at the front, making sure that not hiding our flowers, but we're adding to that story that I'm trying to tell. So poppies, a traditional symbol of remembrance, branches and twigs that symbolise strength and resilience. And then we've got grasses, which represent a passing of time and a connection between the old and the new. And it's a bit of a different video for a Tuesday afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed that one. And don't forget to pop back on Sunday for a new video, which is normally released at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Grab a coffee or pour yourself a glass of wine, and I'll see you for a next date on Sunday. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell to be told every time I upload a new tutorial. And I look forward to seeing you for the next one. Bye for now.